Hello everyone, as Beth said, my name is Jim. Happy to be here with you today. Thanks for joining us. Dalton and I are two of 25 actuaries at MedPro Group. And while we're a small team, I'm really proud to say that Alteryx has been part of what we've been doing for 10 years now. Checked it the other day, our first module had an April of 2007 date on it.
July 26th.
Yeah, so we've been Alteryx users for a long time. And then last year, the team won an award, the Excellence Award for Best Use of Server. And then, as we saw announced today, Daigen, who's on our team at MedPro, was one of the new aces. So we're really happy to be here, be part of the contributing to the continued knowledge and community that's Alteryx. So if we go to the agenda, I'm going to kick it off and talk a little bit about who MedPro Group is. Probably nobody in the room has ever heard of us. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face. And then I'm going to hand it over to Dalton, who's going to talk about how we have used fuzzy matching to address some of those challenges. And then how him and the team have improved upon the fuzzy matching tool and created the fuzzy match master. Then he's going to get into a really deep dive into how the logic of that fuzzy match master works. And what that's going to allow you to do is learn how to modify it and create customizations so that you can use it for your business problems. And then lastly, he'll show you how we've implemented that on the server as well. So, as you can see, MedPro Group is part of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway company. We specialize in medical malpractice. So, at the highest level, we're an insurance company, and insurance is a promise to help and pay when things go wrong. So, in the United States, there's around 75,000 accusations of wrongdoing every year against healthcare providers, and about 15,000 payments to injured patients. So, that sounds kind of scary, but, the vast majority of healthcare providers in the United States are highly trained, they're very careful, and they want to provide the best healthcare possible. But as we all know, sometimes bad things happen to good people, and that's when you need insurance. Now, on the other hand, though, there is a very small percentage that we all want to avoid that is sloppy, lazy, even deceitful. And amazingly enough, it's that 2% of high-risk doctors that comprise 50% of those 75,000 medical malpractice payments. So, in order to keep costs down for our clients, we want to keep those high-risk doctors out of our company as clients, and that's part of how we use then Alteryx to help us do that. So our market is the roughly 8.5 million healthcare providers in the United States. And as we engage with that market, internal and external information can come into any of our processes at any point in time. And so keeping track of those high-risk individuals among that 8.5 million is like keeping track of a needle in an ever-changing haystack. And so what we try to do is complete that process and have data that is synced up and clean across all of that, because every piece of information in there comes together, and we use that to help us manage risk and find opportunities for growth. So before Alteryx, the team was really struggling with keeping our data clean. And here's a couple examples. The first of all is list matching. So we have a bunch of sales folks who go around the country and meet with doctors. They go to conventions like this. And one example might be we have a sales agent who comes to the annual chiropractors convention in Las Vegas. And they talk to a bunch of doctors, they sign their names, and they come by and visit our booth. And we want to record that they've interacted and learned about MedPro. And then we go back and we want to put that into our CRM system. Unfortunately, the doctors don't always include the same information. They don't always fill out all the fields. And as we saw, the number of records in our CRM database, 8.4 million, is huge. So that job never really got done, and we weren't able to really keep good track of that. On the other hand, from a systems perspective, we may have claim systems, billing systems, underwriting systems, all that are different, and oftentimes we can have the same name or a different name for the same account across all those systems. And so being able to keep track of all those systems and duplicates was a real challenge as well. And so as we all know, garbage in, garbage out, and that's when we realized, Houston, we've got a problem here. And so whether the problem is list matching or system deduping, the answer was really the same. Use fuzzy matching to find the matches and either take them out of your system or record the information that you needed to. And so with that, I'm now going to hand it over to Dalton to go through the aspects of fuzzy matching.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so quick poll to kind of help us understand the audience a little bit. Raise your hand if you have done fuzzy matching in Alteryx before. Awesome. Raise your hand if you have done a batch macro in Alteryx before. All right, still quite a few hands. Awesome. So as Jim said, fuzzy matching was the obvious solution to both of those key business problems, trying to integrate all of that data from that 8.5 million doctor market to our own systems. And so we're not going to be teaching fuzzy matching today, but you are going to get some insights into how fuzzy matching works. And we're going to focus on showing you how we've kind of taken fuzzy matching as it exists in Alteryx and ramped it up a level and implemented it into the way that we do business. So to just kind of give you a basic high-level approach to when you're thinking about doing fuzzy matching, you start with knowing your data and what fields you want to match on. So to use the chiropractic association example that Jim used, we might get the doctor's name, first name, last name. We might get their address or maybe the type of, for chiropractors, or maybe we're attending a doctor's group and so there's different types of doctors. We might get that information. What fields do you want to match on? After that, Alteryx, drag, drop, configure fuzzy match tool, boom, done. Pick all the different match styles. There's a lot you can do in that tool. Now, what if you want to do more than one fuzzy match tool? Well, then there's a couple extra steps. You have to label, as I've done with those formula tools there, what fields or some way to identify the fuzzy match that you are doing and rank them. So the two examples I have on the left, I have zip code, last, first name, and address. And that's a better fuzzy match combination than on the right, last name, first name, and address. So I'm going to rank with the formula tool. I'm going to label them as such, and I'm going to call the one on the left 1, the one on the right 2. And when I bring them together, I can now, step 4, pick the best match. So if I have records A and B and they come through on both, I don't really care that it came through on the left, not the right. But the right side might give you match results that the left side didn't. That's why we need both of them. And to kind of go in a little bit more detail on why we need more than one fuzzy match tool, why can't we just include all the fields we want to match on one tool? Well, there's a couple quirks about fuzzy matching in Alteryx that you may be familiar with. The first is missing data. If you have nulls or empties in your data, sorry, those are completely ignored. If any one of those 4 fields that I'm using on that left example has any missing data, that record's gone. Now, you can uncheck that option, change the default, but then you're basically telling Alteryx, I want to match nothing to something. Well, you're not going to get any results that way either. So let's pretend that zip code was empty in some of my data. Matches might come through on the right example. So that's one reason why you need multiple fuzzy matches. The other is just bad matches. If I have a field like, 2 last names that are pretty close but not exactly the same because we transferred the information from the list at our booth wrong, fuzzy matching, it'll say, oh, that one field doesn't match well enough, kick the combination out. Every field has to match stronger than the threshold for that field that you set up in the fuzzy match tool. So those 2 structural issues are why we want to use many fuzzy match tools. But then when we do that, we introduce a new problem, combinations. So I got a little data table here. We're using some space theming going on here with Neil Armstrong and Leslie Peltier. In this data set, with just 4 fields, I can generate all those possible combinations for ways to configure a fuzzy match tool on the right. That's about 13 of them for just 4 fields. Now, obviously, using all 4 fields would be preferred, but look, I got missing data in rows 2 and 3. So those weaker combinations with fewer fields are going to enable Neil Armstrong and Neil Armstrong to possibly match, or the 2 Leslie Peltier records to possibly match, something that wouldn't have happened with the strongest match combination. But when you introduce combinations, you then have to ask yourself, well, how many of these combinations do I really need? I don't want to configure 13 fuzzy match tools. And then you also have to ask yourself, how are these more important? It's really easy to see that the one with 4 fields is the most important, but what about all those ones with only 2 fields? How do you order those? But we really wanted to get around those 2 issues I mentioned with the normal fuzzy match tool, so what we decided to do is we're going to look at all the doctor lists that we've ever gotten, and we get several a week. And we're going to look at all the different fields that we've received, and we're going to configure a bunch of fuzzy match tools and throw them all into one workflow so that we don't have to build a new workflow customized for every list every time. We're going to try to self-serve our doctor list matching. And so we went ahead and did that, and this is what we got. Introducing the MedPro Doctor List Scrubber. A whopping 48 fuzzy match tools, 48 joins, and Alteryx 11.0 cannot even open this thing. We had to download 10.6, open it up, snap this picture, throw it in the slide for you guys. Speaking of the slides, these will be available to you after the presentation, so don't worry, you'll be getting these. So this wasn't going to work. There were actually a lot of errors we found out in this workflow. And we were missing combinations. We had to decide for ourselves what combinations we wanted, and frankly, we missed a couple key ones, and we also included a bunch that we didn't really need. And so we wanted something that was easier to maintain, something that was more flexible, and something that was more self-serve than our first brute force approach. And that's where we created the Fuzzy Match Master. Last summer, I put this macro together to basically replace that monster of a workflow that you saw before. The Fuzzy Match Master is a Alteryx macro, which is a workflow inside of a workflow, and it was really meant to do what Dean Stoker said this morning, simplicity and sophistication. How can I get the sophistication of that big workflow with the simplicity of a single tool? So just kind of briefly explain the macro before we actually go in and show it to you. A macro in Alteryx, as I said, is a workflow inside of a single tool. A lot of the tools that you use in Alteryx are actually macros. The data cleansing tool, that's a macro. There's different types of macros, and one of those is called a batch macro. Batch macro basically says, here's my workflow, and I want to change the formula tool to say something else, and I have this list of different somethings I want it to say. It'll batch loop through each of those different configuration tweaks that you give it and run that workflow a bunch of times and then package all those results and give them to you as like a union, basically. So the Fuzzy Match Master is a standard macro with a couple batch macros inside of it to loop through all the combinations that you care about. It works with anywhere you can put a fuzzy match tool. You can drag and drop a fuzzy match master as well. And how it works is you input the fields and the match styles just like you would a normal fuzzy match tool. There's a couple new options you get to have, and then it's going to generate the combinations for you. It's going to rank them for you. It's going to allow you to include and exclude ones, and then it's going to give you an output that looks almost exactly like the normal fuzzy match tool. So now let's go to an example workflow that I have set up for everyone. It's a little challenging to get out of PowerPoint and into Alteryx. All right. So Jim mentioned the doctor list matching. I got a dummy doctor list in this input and a little extract of our CRM in the right output. If you've ever done merge mode in fuzzy matching before, you know I got a label with a column called source, for example, where the records came from and then union them together. So same thing I'd normally do for fuzzy matching. Give it a record ID. Fuzzy matching uses record IDs to say record ID 1 and 2 matched or 1 and 5 matched, so that's why we need that tool. So on the right here, I have 7 fuzzy match tools. And if I look at I label each of them, I union them together, I pick the best one, and if I look at my final results, I get 14 matches. I can then join the data back on and see that I get my results and can see the data compared side by side. That entire tool container, this big tool container, is completely replicated in this tool container, which makes use of the fuzzy match master. So I'll pull up the configuration here and just kind of walk you through it. So it requires a record ID field called record ID. There's a checkbox that allows you to only see the combination. So it doesn't even have to do the fuzzy matching. It can just tell you, for starters, these are the combinations that I'm going to make for you based on the fields that you enter. You enter the fields a little lower. So I'll scroll down here. I got 15 spots in here for you to enter fields. So here I've configured this one with first name using a match style of names with nicknames, last name with the style of name, etc. And then I can also set my overall match threshold, just like a normal fuzzy match tool. Now we get a little more sophisticated, minimum number of fields in each match. So I could have a combination that's just last name or just first name. That wouldn't really do any good in most cases, so I'm going to make sure that there has to be at least 2 fields in each combination. Then you can select the fields that you want to make sure they're always there. Well, in case of doctor names and matching them to our CRM system, if I don't have the doctor's last name, yay, I match these 2 addresses, Bob Smith and Betty Smith. No, not the same person. And then another option we have is to prevent fields that should not coexist in a match. So we do a lot of like middle initial versus middle name matching. And I don't want a combination that has both of those because that's kind of like doing some of the same work twice. So you configure all of this, and the macro will tell you down in the C output the different combinations that it will run with those parameters. If I change, let's say, the minimum number needed to 3, numbers 5, 6, and 7 there would go away. Let's say I don't like one of these combinations. Maybe I don't like last name and address, because address may not mean that much without a state or a zip code, for example. So last address, I don't like that one. So I'm going to take and I'm going to copy that output, C output, and I'm going to right-click on my canvas and paste. I get a text input, and I'm going to just get rid of all of my combinations except for last address. And then I'm going to connect that to my C input on the fuzzy match master and say exclude combinations in the C input. So if I rerun this workflow now, we had 7 combinations coming through before, and now we only have 6. So you can tweak your combinations to make it more efficient of a process. And then the output, as I mentioned before, is pretty much exactly the same as the normal fuzzy match tool with my 2 record IDs. It also gives you the match score and then 2 new fields, rank and type. Rank is a way that you can sort and kind of view your results, see how many matches you got at the different levels. And the type is my label, how I described which of those fuzzy matches, all of those 7 different combinations on the right, which one of those it came from. And it actually even labels, if the match score is 100%, it'll say exact in the type for you. So you know that, hey, this is better than a fuzzy with the same fields. So that's the fuzzy match master in action. And what we're going to do now is take you into the macro itself so that you can actually see the inside and then download this macro from the public gallery and begin deploying it within your own company. It's already out there and available for download, and we'll show you at the end how to find it. So for those of you who don't know, you can right-click on a macro and click Open Macro, and it'll take you right inside of it. And here we have the Fuzzy Match Master with my super cool font. Had to have fun making this thing. So it's kind of a big macro, it seems like, but I broke it up into different boxes for you. It's actually not too complicated. All the fields that you enter come in these interface tools over here, the field and match style. And those with wireless connections just come into this text input right here. So you can see the data starts in my workflow. It's going to do a little bit of cleanup to get the fields in order for the way that it needs it. And then we enter this green box, which generates all the possible combinations. Now, I made use of a macro that was available on the Alteryx community called the combinations macro. I did not make this. The source for that is right in this comment box, so you know where you can find that to download as well. And what it's going to do is, if I have like A, B, C, it's going to make ABC, AB, AC, BC, ABC. It's going to make all those combinations. So we just do that with field names this time around. And so what comes out of that is going to be a list of all the fields and what combination they were a part of. I can then join that back to my field names, and I know what my combinations are. Now we enter this orange box. The orange box is where those different configurations, like the minimum number of fields you need, which ones are required, which ones you don't want to coexist, all of that is being excluded in this red box. Basic tools, some filters, summarize, join, pretty simple. Now in this purple box is where the magic and the more technical stuff of the Fuzzy Match Master has. How many of you have worked at all with XML within Alteryx? Okay, fewer hands, as expected. So XML is the language that basically every Alteryx workflow you have is just a text file of XML. And the Alteryx engine knows how to interpret that to run the data and do the magic that Alteryx does. So what we're actually doing is built into this text input is the XML of the Fuzzy Match tool. Most of it, anyway. And we copied this XML in. These are the default Fuzzy Match styles, name, nicknames, address, etc. And we just called them exactly that. We actually tweaked names with nicknames because the way that it's set up as a default actually wouldn't work the way you expected. So we took out or tweaked that a little bit to make it better for our purposes. And then we rank it to make it more efficient. And I won't explain that here. But the higher the rank, like a 1 is given to exact. That means if the field, if I don't match on that field, then I don't have to worry about processing all the other ones because that field didn't match, so I'm done. What the macro will do now is take that XML, join it to the fields and the combinations, and have XML for every single combination that you're running through the tool. So it finishes cleaning that up and concatenating it here. This next orange box, what it does is it takes that C input and includes and excludes. Our intern, Skylar Haas, also known as the lowly intern on the Alteryx community, he set this up so that it doesn't matter what order your fields are. I could have typed zip comma first or first comma zip. It would have excluded it either way, so you don't have to worry about that. So the C input's taken care of there. Order doesn't matter. And finally, I can sort to make sure I'm doing the combinations, most fields first, fewer fields last, and feed that into the batch macro dynamic fuzzy match, which is nothing more than a fuzzy match tool, some messages, and a couple things to prevent duplicates and make it run faster. So that XML from that text input made its way all the way into this control parameter and is literally replacing part of the XML of this fuzzy match tool, from the style tag to the end style tag. And then for all the different fields that you have, it puts those all in there. So it's basically making a new fuzzy match tool every single time it runs a combination and loops through. This one little workflow is doing the vast majority of the work. After that, it just cleans up your results, makes them look pretty, and only gives you the best one. So if a record appears in multiple combinations, you're only going to get it once. So Jim mentioned that you can customize this. Well, it's a macro, so you can tear this apart, you can tweak it, you can add new features. We have ideas for things that we want to do with it. Feel free, go for it. One way that we like to customize it is by adding new match styles. So let's say I'm back in my normal fuzzy match tool, and I come up with a cool new configuration for zip code, let's say. Actually, zip code's pretty tight. Let's do last name. Let's say all this, the configuration in the fuzzy match tool. I recommend you checking out the Alteryx community training videos. They explain this a little bit better in terms of all the different options that you have. So let's say I want a different key generation, and I want to use both the Jaro and Levenstein algorithms. And this is my new type, match style. I can grab the XML for that new custom thing, which you can see right here. If you copy and paste this XML into that text input in the fuzzy match master, and then add that new title, whatever you want to call it, to your drop-downs in those interface tools, boom, you have another option in your fuzzy match master, and you can have as many options as you want. So it's kind of allowing you to do more with fuzzy matching than you could with the normal tool. All right. So you're probably thinking, okay, this seems pretty cool, pretty comprehensive, but does it really work? Does it really make a difference and solve the fuzzy matching problems that we wanted it to solve? And the answer to that question is absolutely it does. Before, you were like a snail. You needed multiple fuzzy match tools, and you had to configure all of them, and you were making mistakes along the way. We were making a lot of mistakes along the way. Now we're a cheetah. One tool, drag and drop, one tool, and it's a customizable tool too. Before, we had to maintain this monster workflow, and then Alteryx upgraded, and we couldn't maintain it anymore. Now it's one tool. And you can actually, that C input, you could make that an Excel spreadsheet. And then you can change your combinations that you want to include and exclude without having to republish your work, change your workflows or republish your apps that you use this in. And that is why the Fuzzy Match Master earns the star for self-service, because we've actually been able to use this. I took a brand new data system that we had, and I spent a day getting all the data organized, but spent 5 minutes dropping the fuzzy matching in, and lo and behold, I had a comprehensive fuzzy matching process in only a couple minutes. Viewed the results, and we were able to deduplicate that system from there. And to get some numbers, we had close to 50,000 duplicates, organization, like hospital facility duplicates identified in the data set that I just mentioned. And the Fuzzy Match Master found those for us. And then for the doctor lists, with that Scrubber app that we've produced, in just 9 months, after 120 different runs of this app, we've added or changed close to 35,000 pieces of information in our CRM system. So it's productionized and working on our server environment, and has allowed us to go from this to this. Much, much cleaner, much easier to maintain. We have one Fuzzy Match Master in there for individuals, one for groups, and an input tool there so we can change the combinations without having to republish it. This app is out on our public gallery, and since we were the best use case of Excellence Award for our server last year, we'll take you out and show you our server. So this is the MedPro Gallery. Looks a little different than the public gallery. We did some code tweaks to make it work for us. And if I scroll down here, we have our Scrubber 2.0. And we set up the interface so that anyone in our company can add a file, a spreadsheet from a marketing or an agent campaign that they're doing 13 different fields that we've seen in our lists. They can pick and choose which ones they've had, and then match against our CRM system. Maybe they want to do groups only. Maybe they want to do exact only. They have a lot of different options. And then they can even scrub against another Excel file or another text file, Alteryx file. They can do 2 files or a file against our CRM. This app allows any non-Alteryx user to take advantage of the Fuzzy Match Master. Before, we only were running 48 combinations, and they were labeled, some of them were labeled incorrectly. Now we're running 100 combinations and getting more comprehensive results in our data. 25% of our employees are using our gallery, with another decent percentage using it through APIs. And like I said, this app's been used over 120 times just in the last 3 quarters. All right, so by this point, I hope you guys, have learned a little bit about fuzzy matching. And if you're new to fuzzy matching, there's a lot of great resources out on the Alteryx community to help you kind of get up to speed, to understand why we did some of the things that we did in the Fuzzy Match Master. I hope you're also excited to actually take the Fuzzy Match Master home with you. And we have shared it out in the Alteryx Gallery for you. And all you have to do is search Fuzzy Match Master with the quotes, click on the icon, click download, and save the file. And for those of you who have never been out to the gallery before, we'll just show you real quick what that looks like. So here's the public gallery. Macro's on the home page because I just uploaded it this morning after adding some new documentation. But if you click up in the search bar here, quote Fuzzy Match Master, enter. There it is. Some details about it. Click download. Remember, there's macros inside of it, so it's actually going to come as an Alteryx zip file, and you can just double-click on that, open it in Alteryx, and it'll unpackage those workflows and work automatically for you right there. All right. So there's the Fuzzy Match Master. At this time, we are done with our presentation on self-service fuzzy matching, taking fuzzy matching from Alteryx, leveling it up with a batch process, and implementing it on our gallery, as well as in the designer. We encourage you to fill out the session survey. Here are the instructions. It's all on the mobile app. Just pick this session and scroll down a little bit to the survey spot. And at this time, Jim and I will take any questions that you guys have. It's 1:34, so we got 10 minutes before the next group. And we have someone with a microphone there in the back, so you just raise your hand, you can get your question answered.
Hi, my name is Amar. My question is related to your master data management using this fuzzy matching. How frequently you get the data from the sources, and how frequently you update your CRM system?
Good question. So the CRM system is one of many systems that we update, and the CRM actually gets a lot of data feeds. So our data is updated quarterly, but we can run the app that we showed you whenever we have new information come in at any point of the cycle that Jim mentioned. So if we get a list tomorrow, we can run this and implement it into our process. We'll run a whole system dedupe about once a quarter using fuzzy matching in Alteryx, and then update our CRM quarterly from that. But the only reason why we do it quarterly is just the time it takes to kind of look at the fuzzy matching results and see which ones we actually want to implement and change. We could do it as often as we wanted to with the power of Alteryx.
Thank you. One more question. Do you do the electronic death match using this? Do you do the death match for, if suppose you have an individual and there can be claims that are coming from the doctor, and you may have to do a list of your employees or your enrollees within that group, right? You want to do the electronic death match before even you process their claim or something like that, right? Do you have anything like that in this?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Sorry. Do you do any electronic death match kind of processes in your whole...
Electronic...
Death match.
Death?
Yeah.
Death match?
Yeah.
We do have record or system that kind of keeps track of retired, disabled, and passed away doctors that links into our CRM directly and labels the records so that we can match them that way.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm curious to know how you handle doctors, physicians, or providers that have multiple addresses or whose addresses change over time. How do you recognize that they're the same individual?
Sure. So in our system, we have one row per address. And so if we match on one line, that account number is on multiple lines, and we're able to identify the doctor through that manner. So let's say a doctor moves from one county to another county within a state. Those weaker combinations are going to see that doctor's first name and last name and state match. The address isn't going to match anymore, but because of those weaker combinations, we say, oh, the state still matches, or the phone number still matches, or the email still matches, or one of those other fields that are going to give us a better idea that, oh, that's who the doctor is. And then we can say, wow, the address isn't the same anymore, and merge those two records using the new data as our new supplemental records to feed into the system. So we just hope that those weaker combinations have enough in common between the new state of the doctor and the old state of the doctor so that we can then update the record accordingly. With just using the stronger combinations, we wouldn't have been able to identify because the information was changed. Any other questions about fuzzy matching or the fuzzy match master?
Mine is about the gallery.
Okay, sure.
What changes? Yeah. What changes did you make to gallery and why?
Sure. So Jim mentioned that Patrick Daigen is an Alteryx ace, and he kind of led us tweaking the look of our gallery a bit. And so one of the changes that we made is to put this more square approach rather than the rectangular approach, and get rid of the author name and the type of thing that it is, because we only have apps on ours, not macros, so we didn't really need this. We didn't really care who the author was, because you can see it by clicking into it. So to get more apps on one page, that is why we motivated to this approach. It's a little bit more consolidated. Aside from that aesthetic look, we made a couple changes to make it easier for the admins to have control. So like I, as an admin on our gallery, can edit, I can download other people's workflows even if they didn't check the setting, hey, I'm going to allow people to download this workflow. Admins can now do that without that setting being checked. So just a couple things to make it more admin friendly. Small tweaks to the Java and CSS files that feed this, and that's all. Really just for aesthetic purposes. Sure. For fuzzy matching in general, or this macro? Okay. Sure. Okay, so the question was what are some other use cases for fuzzy matching or the fuzzy match master aside from just deduping our CRM system? Insurance companies have a lot of different systems: claim system, policyholder management system, CRM system. So we're going to be deduping a lot of those systems. The list matching, taking external data that comes in at any point of that cycle, engagement, service, marketing, sales, taking external information and trying to integrate it into our existing systems is the other broad use case for fuzzy matching. We've also used it to test new data vendors. So, for example, we want to buy this new doctor data. How good does that data stack up against another data vendor that we're investigating, or our current data that we're already purchasing? We can fuzzy match to our systems or to the other vendor's data and compare them and make a better decision on what data vendor that we should go with going forward. That's the third main way that we've used fuzzy matching. Got a few more minutes for any more questions, more comments. Yes. Yep. So 25% of our employees are using the Gallery apps and have never seen the Alteryx Designer before. And so we make it very easy for them. We do a lot of work to think about our interface tools that we want to use. And so, for example, this report is as simple as just entering a file of NPI numbers and a couple drop downs. And then we train everyone with a video. We actually do like a screen capture video to say, hey, here's this new Alteryx app. This is how you fill it out. Here's a couple examples of ways that you would use it. And they don't even need to know all the data processing, fuzzy matching algorithms, CAS, address validation. They don't need to know all of that. They just need to know, why is this out here? What can I use it for? And how do I fill it out? And any other pertinent information. So we've really tried to take the technical piece out of it for our gallery users and focus on technical discussions with our Alteryx designers that are actually building some of these apps and macros.
And the only part I would add to that would be that we've tried to disseminate the use of the designer across the functions as well. So we have people in IT, data warehouse, finance, claims opt, I don't know if they're using it yet or not.
Not yet.
Yeah, but we have got those folks, they're seeing the power of Alteryx and they're designing the apps for their teams to use. So it's not just coming up from one function to the other, it's actually growing up from the inside.
And that helps give the context. Someone in finance is better able to explain the data that they're using and what they're doing with it better than we could, even though we may be better at Alteryx itself. So. Find the right users in your team and use the interface tools to their full potential.
This is not a question. I just want to appreciate the amount of work that you guys have done. It's an amazing job.
Well, thank you very
Kudos
much.
to you.
Great.
Give it up for Dalton. He's done a great job.
Thank you. So yeah, go ahead and download the Fuzzy Match Master from the gallery, and there's plenty of documentation in it to hopefully get you started customizing it, using it for yourself, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Don't forget about the surveys, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks for coming.